while we're getting that together, Brandy, I think what I'm interested in hearing is if everyone has the same thought as to what a hub is, because people have an idea as to what they are, but they're often divergent. So I'm just interested in us getting it, to be of the same accord.
That is a really great point, Stacey. Let us start with, can you see the slides? Okay. And then Deb, were you able to, let me know if you end up pulling them up. I'm going to go ahead and give the little brief presentation, and then hopefully by that time you can take notes, but let me know. So Stacey, I will start off by saying, I don't think the county has a very, very clear definition yet of what they mean by resilience hubs. There's still some flexibility around what that might look like. And so that's a great question to just sort of ponder today and think, from a resident perspective, what should a hub look like? But we'll sort of give the cookie cutter, what is a resilience hub? So resilience hubs are often community facilities that have been enhanced to better support residents, coordinate communication, distribute resources, and reduce carbon pollution while enhancing quality of life. So these hubs oftentimes will have like a microgrid or energy backup storage type of thing, will sometimes be sort of in tandem with a cooling center, a community center. But these are places where we're really hoping that it's in a community, right? And that it's a resource that communities will use on a regular basis. It's a place where you can go to get information, and certainly it does not actually take over, it does not replace your community shelters. It does not replace your community cooling centers. This is oftentimes going to be complementary to those things, but really should be a place of convening where someone can go to get more information and hopefully connect with their fellow community members. So that's just a very brief description. It's broad. But Stacey, you seem to have some background, and so maybe you can describe for you, when you think resilience hub, what is it that conjures for you? What does it have to entail?
All of the above. Okay. and the reason why I attended this meeting tonight, since this is a planning meeting for us to make recommendations, is that, each of our communities, especially our fence line and frontline communities most impacted by climate change, have different needs. And I was hoping that the plan would be able to be tailored to the different needs of the different communities within the most impacted communities within the county. What's going on, say, for example, in Brandywine is very different than what is happening, say, for example, in Langley Park or Hyattsville. So like I said, I was just wanting to see how we were going to tailor our plan to address the needs of the various communities, especially with the Justice 40 monies that are coming forward, and how we can tap into those monies to support these various communities.
Those are all great points, Stacey. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the slide about the action steps that were outlined in the blueprint, because you mentioned something that I think is really important, which is making sure that the resilience hub is catered to the community that it's actually serving. And so sort of this is the way that the county is thinking about this, right? So they know they want to implement, or the goal is to implement at least 10 resilience hubs across the county in climate impacted vulnerable communities by 2030. It's an ambitious goal, I think, but also one that is certainly doable if we're committed. The first step is to really identify what are those vulnerable communities, right? Where can these be generally located? But once I think the county has developed those sort of priority locations for those 10 resilience hubs, step 2 is really identifying partner organizations so that those resilience hubs are developed in tandem with the community itself, right? So identifying just potential locations, working with folks who can actually help develop these resilience hubs, but then engaging the community to design what the services are going to be provided at that resilience hub. So you mentioned tailoring the programs to the community needs. That's going to require actually talking to the community to make sure that they're the ones who are saying, here's what we need in case of an emergency, here's what we need in terms of building our everyday resilience in our community. And so really thinking through how we do that engagement with communities to make sure that it really is a community-driven resilience hub as opposed to top-down. And then, of course, right, with all things, there's a need to develop a funding strategy that goes along with the actual project, so that we make sure that these resilience hubs are not just established, but have ongoing funding so that they can be maintained. So this is the general steps, the action steps for a resilience hub. But the conversation today, hopefully, is going to be around how do we make this tangible? What are those implementation steps to make sure that community engagement is done correctly? What goes into defining a climate impacted vulnerable community? So I'm going to hand the screen sharing back over to Deb, who will share the screen for us to engage in a conversation. She's going to take some notes. Deb, also feel free to chime in. You've been working on this sort of effort I think, in a couple different states, and you certainly heard what other communities have done. So let us know if you have any thoughts as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Do you see mine?
Yeah, so let me actually, that says view only. So let me go ahead and make sure.
Oh, hold on, I shared the wrong, because I had it open twice. Sorry. Now that on PowerPoint. I don't know, Brandy, it's not letting me share it on PowerPoint. I have it open here.
Okay, I'll just.
Let me try one more time and see if there's a reason. I've never had it not give me an option. Oh.
Beautiful.
You seeing it?
I am.
Thank you all. Sorry for that.
So this is sort of our time to just have a general discussion. We have some prompt questions to help guide the conversation, but really this is your time to sort of share with us, you know, what you think is important for this particular topic. You know, so what are some of the hurdles that might need to be cleared in order to actually see resilience hubs on the ground? And so I'm going to go ahead and, Susan, you have your hand raised.
Were we starting to list? I'm sorry, I just raised it in anticipation. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, if you don't mind, then Lisa, if you have Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you because.
Okay. What are some hurdles that need to be cleared? So I'm a resident of District 9. I'm in South County. And one of the things that I noticed since living here is that it's extremely difficult to get information unless you have figured out how to opt into your county council representative's email. If they so choose to email you, that's really the easiest way for you to get some information. And my council representative is not a person who communicates. And so I think there are several different avenues that we would have to pursue all at once in order for us to ensure that we have representation and just channels for participation from communities. So one, I think it's going to require that the PG environmental department gets the I don't know that you can do it. It might have to come from General Assembly, but basically mandates county representatives to adopt this as something that they do. I think that we'll have to tap public agencies. So we will have to leverage the schools so that they can get to parents. We'll have to leverage hospitals so that they can speak to workers, government department, wherever there are people working, in the public workers. That is one way that you can get people in there. There's another thing, just in terms of towns. So most of the towns in District 9 are unincorporated. So there isn't a local government. We have the county. We need to establish basically town commissions, similar to what DC has when they have the like neighborhood commissions, the ANCs. We need a structure like that where residents have a channel to communicate, and that and that body, it's mandated for the county council representative to work with that body. This is a way that you could sort of even the playing field, so people know, like, okay, in Akakeek, that's where I live, you know, every time this month we can talk about this issue, and this is a way that we can keep people accountable. We can talk about this. The commissioner of that town commission can bring this up, and this is a way that we can systematically get this information and feedback from people here. I think we can also use voting records to like do outreach, you know, like who are the people in the county. I think it has to be every single way that, you know, on April 15th, IRS reaches everybody. What are those channels to like communicate? How can we leverage those same channels to communicate with everyone here and create processes that everyone can access and know to anticipate? So I just think that just because, like, again, out here in District 9, like where every town is like fending for itself. Maybe Upper Marlboro, because they have a council, but it's super small. It's like 3 people. So like, all I'm saying is we don't have a ton of representation. And I know other parts of the county have issues, and I can't even imagine what that is. But I know we don't even have mayors. We don't even have local councils. So we have to actually develop new systems for residents to participate in this. And it has to be able to also support, you know, people who English is not their first language. Like, how can we reach out to these communities? And, you know, like Stacy identified at the top of the call, we need to have a definition so that like that part is settled before you go to the larger community, because then you definitely aren't going to get anywhere. There has to be a certain baseline that's established. There has to be a certain baseline that's established and agreed to, and we have to have the buy-in of our county representatives to drive this home. Like, this can't be like, oh, only some districts do it. Only, you know, this is the issue of Councilman Dernoga because he's the environmental guy, no one else does. It can't be that way. So there has to be some sort of mandate that comes from higher. If, you know, Hogan has to be in this too, to like push down. He probably won't be, or whoever replaces him come 2022. But the point is, it still has to be like everyone, all hands on deck with this in order to get community buy-in, because it's so difficult to get communication to everybody equitably.
Lisa, I think those were all really great points. Deb, I just want to add on one thing that she mentioned that I don't think you captured, which is having a clear concept or definition for what a baseline is before we start talking to communities, so that they one that is tailorable and flexible, but certainly one that we can articulate what we mean when we say resilience hub. Susan, I'll put it back to you because I know you had wanted to say something, but we're a little unsure. So do you want to go ahead and make your contribution?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I thought I had jumped in too quickly, so I apologize. Yes, what I want to say is you can see that I make comments about the maglev. I've been heavily involved in that. And one thing about that issue that I have learned is the community engagement at the community level, within the community, pressuring, emailing, pushing. It's taken years. I've been involved since 2018 in that issue, and we're really making a lot of inroads. But it's constantly pushing out information at the grassroots level, pushing the political, along with what was being said, up at the higher levels, and pushing, inundating them, going to the meetings, doing Zoom has really helped a lot, I have to say, getting a lot more people and that kind of thing, because that political will isn't going to be there unless the elected people feel that their constituents are going to knock them out of office because they're scared because they don't want to be run out of office. And so there has to be a lot of pressure. You can have honesty and decency, et cetera, and people behind it. I'm not saying they're not, but that political pressure from the lobbyists at the developers and all of that are going to be, and you know, businesses that come in, Walmarts and everything that comes in, that's going to be the bigger pressure because they're looking at tax dollars and this and that. But it's going to really take an intense grassroots effort and you have to keep pushing. And the problem is engagement. You know, Bladensburg is a town that has a mayor, that has a council, but engagement. I mean, a handful of people go to the meetings. It's advertised. Their meetings are advertised for town hall, etc. And we have to find a key of engagement to push the policy, to make sure the policy is, this is what the people want. And there is one idea that somebody floated that we've been talking about in the maglev issue that it sounds kind of crazy, but I'll say it here. It'd be great to push for a fund for constituents to make commentary, et cetera, to help them put out information, to do whatever, who want to comment on big projects or other, you know, projects or policies, or when this comes out or whatever. But in that way, they will be supported in being able to speak and to say to do something. And that I think is really important because we don't have the money, we don't have the power, we don't have the law, you know, connections like that. And we need to do that. The other thing I quickly was going to say is, in Bladensburg, I see elements of the hub, back to the hub issue. I see elements of where some things are being established and the farm is here and whatever. Is the concept, to be clear, a hub like this is all like in one place? Like say the farm would be, you have the, you know, you have the main hub or whatever the buildings say. And then you have a farming area or a crop area or growing or whatever. And these other things, is the idea being a hub in a real sense of it's all in the same location? Because, or in a small town like Bladensburg, a smaller town, it's not that huge so that there's a big thing with the community center that you can do something. And then there's a nice, farm area. So
so normally when I think people think about resilience hubs, it is typically a facility where you can have many resources and sort of be a one-stop shop for a lot of your real resilience issues. Also, oftentimes those will sort of go tandem with renewable energy and some sort of battery backup storage, so that should something happen, that there is still the ability to have that facility run. So I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
I would point out that sometimes you might note that sometimes that is not practical. I mean, it's a great concept, but it may or may not be practical given your location. That's all. Look at alternatives. That's all.
I was going to say that there are definitely instances where we see, and again, and there are many cities around the country that are working on this idea of resilience hubs and again, defining their own. I think one of the nice things is that they are not an emergency shelter. So their services and structures not like dictated by FEMA or anyone else. It really is a concept that each community can take and make their own. We have definitely seen instances where a group of buildings or facilities is the resilience hub. Particularly, I think in areas where they're earthquake prone, they're thinking about both a building, but also like a field or an area that people can be outside and gather in the case of needing to do so. So they look really different in different parts of the country, in different cities, and really think about what people need. I think a common theme, however, is that they're built around a place that people are already gathering. So you're not trying to create something where there was nothing, but building on whether it's a community center or a church or a school or a facility that really already existed in a place that people are comfortable with and know and already kind of inclined to gather and think of as a resource, and building from that, I think is a common theme that I've seen.
Thank you, Deb, for expanding on that. Stacy, let's go ahead, and I know you've been waiting patiently. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I put it in there, and first of all, it seems like from the feedback that we've been hearing from people that credibility is an issue with our leadership, not only our county leadership, but also our legislative leadership. So, there's got to be some work done to demonstrate to the people that, they have, what's the old song, what have you done for me lately? So, so there needs to be some social media, some campaign along those lines that say that the plan that we're putting forward is a plan that we're going to follow up on. And the only way one can do that is through having measurable goals and track the outcomes. And then when people are veering away from the plan, or when the plan is not being addressed, there've got to be some accountability measures, some timely accountability measures to address these issues. Too many times funds have been allotted for specific projects, and it gets buy-in, and then people then the funds get reallocated. We saw a prime example of that with the $700 million that was given to Larry Hogan to do to improve transportation with the red line, and it never came to fruition. So, I mean, there's got to be some measures to put fences around these plans that we come up with, so that they are not minimized, diverted, or ignored entirely.
Excellent point. Yeah. We are running out of time, so I just want to make sure, Joseph, can we hear from you?
Hi, this is Joseph from Mount Rainier, and I know I get I'm a municipality, so I get a lot of stuff through there, but I know that in lots of parts of the county, there are civic associations that do some outreach, and I was just wondering if that's been an avenue that's been the county's been pursuing to get this information out as well. That was it. Thank you. Good hearing from everyone, though.
Thank you. So I'm hearing making sure that we have credibility, accountability, and that we're working with our local governments and pushing information out through that pathway. Michael?
Yes, thank you. I want to make sure that you mentioned that they want to use already existing buildings. Many of those buildings are inaccessible to people with disabilities. And I think that access for people with disabilities has to be in the initial planning. They have to be accessible locations, accessible buildings. Interpreters need to be provided. Accommodations for service animals has to be provided. In fact, interpreters for all languages. But I think it's very important that these things take into consideration before in the initial planning stages, not as afterthoughts. Also, email is not the most effective way to reach some people. Some people don't have email, and so other ways needs to be to reach them. And I think that these places should be near public transportation or easily can get to, which is one of the problems with South County, especially, is the transportation system is very it sucks, basically. And so I think that those things should be taken into consideration when in the initial planning, when you're looking at hubs and where to put them and how to run them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Vernon, you've been waiting patiently with your hand up. I apologize. Do you want to go ahead and?
Oh, no, that's okay. Everybody's input has been really valuable, and I really like listening to hearing other people's perspective as well. So just wanted to chime in Maryland National Park and Planning quite several years ago had a resiliency plan, and we would have resiliency meetings pertaining to these specific issues that you're talking about. And so I'm like, the data, where's the data on that? Where's the information pertaining to what's already been put in place pertaining to this so that we can build upon it? Why are we building the bridge all over again? I mean, it's like, we got to cut this out. And so like I said, they definitely, the planning, the resiliency, different parts of structures of the county, given nobody mentioned COVID-19 and how the impact of COVID-19 effect on this issue makes it even more urgent. So, when we're talking about disasters and all of that sort of thing as well, how that plays a part of this whole resiliency issue. So, just wanted to wrap it up and just wanted to say that I've been I'm a student at the University of the District of Columbia, environmental and urban sustainability. I'm a researcher, a veteran researcher. And so, this issue is just at the top. This is of the number one importance. And so I hope we really, really stick to it and get some resolve and get some data that can show actionable items so we can move forward.
Excellent, thank you. The data is certainly something near and dear to my heart, making sure we're tracking the right metrics and using that to inform our decision making. I think it's very, very important. Are there other thoughts maybe on tools and resources as we develop our strategy for resilience hubs that we need to be thinking about? How do we think about, where do we cite them, right? Brendan mentioned data, but what are some of the, how should we define a vulnerable community to even start thinking about building a resilience hub?
And so, I'm sorry, Lisa, okay. You said, how do we define, is what you said?
Yeah, how do we use data to define, right? If the goal is to establish 10 resilience hubs by 2030, how do we define the climate vulnerable communities for which we're going to try to cite these?
Well, the data is already there.
Yeah,
Right, the data. This is not something new. You got demographic of Prince George's County, and you got the Metropolitan District of Columbia, and so there's inner and outer. You can't get, it's one way in, one way out. How do you get in and how do you get out of this place? What do we do in case of an emergency? Where do we go? Those 10, if you're gonna give me a plan that's gonna take me to 2030, we in trouble. Mm. If your plan should have been yesterday pertaining to this issue.
Well, so that's a great point. So, what needs to happen in the next 3 to 5 years for you all to feel like the county is really making progress towards resilience hubs specifically? Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt for anybody. I'm gonna leave it alone after this. The county council is going to the Governor Hogan's is having a meeting, and all the council and all the people are there at the meeting, and they're going to be discussing resiliency and all that we're talking about. So they know, they just need to tell us.
Thank you, Vernon. Lisa, we have about 2 minutes left. Lisa, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think we do have data, but I don't know that we know how to best leverage it to this extent. So I think a few things that we could do is look at who's doing it well and emulate it. That would be probably the easiest way. Are there places around the country that have successfully launched, resilience hubs? Or I bet we could look to Europe, to see how have they done it in a cost-effective, in a cost-effective way. So if we could spend 6 months or 3 to 6 months, doing research and having interviews with either local governments or departments, or if there are organizations that have done this, maybe Habitat for Humanity has done something like this. Who would have done it, who is doing it, and what are those lessons that we can apply, and then take that data to help put together a model that makes sense for Prince George's County.
Thank you, Lisa. No, those are great points. I think we're going to be whisked away pretty soon to the main room. But were there any other thoughts on either tools or resources or measures of success for this particular action?
Along with what Lisa just said, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. What Lisa just said, I read in AARP several different times about whole communities that have been built up for older people, where it's walkable and they have all these, different